Another year, another late season collapse for Mike Tomlin in the Pittsburgh Steelers. It feels like every season, no matter what the roster is, Tomlin leads the Pittsburgh Steelers to a winning season and then essentially checks out down the stretch. That stretch of seasons at 500 or better is impressive, but it's left the Steelers just stuck in mediocrity. There's no way up or improvement, and it's only gotten harder since Ben Roethlisberger retired. At some point, constantly coming up short when it matters most isn't going to be enough. The Steelers haven't won a playoff game since 2016. It's been a long time since that 2008 season where Tomlin won the Super Bowl, and even in 2010 when Pittsburgh made it back. Now, I want to make this clear. Mike Tomlin is an incredible coach. There's no doubt about it, but maybe he needs an elite quarterback to win in the postseason. He is good, and any team would be lucky to have Tomlin as their coach. But man, it's hard to continue to have hope when the Steelers keep falling short and falling apart late in the season. But first, I'd like to thank DraftKings for sponsoring today's video. There are only a few games left in the season, with 8 teams battling it out to make the conference championships. And you can get in on the action right now with our partners over at DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings is offering all new customers $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Don't let the offer slip away. Download the DraftKings app now and sign up using our promo code JDPROD. Stay in on the action and use those $200 in bonus bets on same game parlays, where you can combine multiple bets from the same game for a shot at an even bigger payout. Love the thrill of betting? DraftKings has the ability to bet live on games in progress, making watching the game even more exciting. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy, where you'll have a shot to win cash prizes. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers who sign up using our promo code and bet just $5 on any wager will receive $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code JDPROD only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. And now back to the video. There were a lot of questions for the Pittsburgh Steelers coming into this season, and it's really been the same since Ben Roethlisberger retired. Quarterback. After Big Ben hung him up, the Steelers drafted Kenny Pickett with the 20th overall pick, and it didn't work. He struggled, and Pittsburgh moved on pretty fast. He only got 2 seasons to try himself as a starter, and then he was traded to the Eagles. It was a short leash, but clearly Tomlin didn't think that he was the guy and needed a fresh start at quarterback, and the Steelers got just that, and they got a few options. Pittsburgh traded for Justin Fields as the Bears prepared to draft Caleb Williams, and then the Steelers also signed Russell Wilson. He was cheap and only at a veteran minimum because the Broncos were still paying him so much. It was a wonder as to who would start, and due to an injury to Wilson, it ended up being Fields. He got the Steelers off to a 4-2 start, and it was pretty impressive. In week 1, the Steelers beat the Falcons, and it was a big surprise at the time. The Steelers weren't necessarily expected to be that great, but the Falcons, on the other hand, had pretty high expectations, with Kirk Cousins joining the fold. It was a hint that maybe the Steelers could be solid if they kept going. And in the next weeks, Pittsburgh beat the Broncos and Chargers, who were both playoff teams and got in as a wild card, just like the Steelers. Now, the Steelers did then have a quick losing streak with losses to the Colts and Cowboys, who both weren't particularly good this season, but the Steelers then bounced back and beat the Raiders to get to 4-2 before Wilson ultimately got healthy and took over. 4-2 is already pretty good, and clearly Tomlin wanted to move on to Wilson. But the reality was that the Steelers weren't winning because of Fields. Once Wilson took over at quarterback, the offense looked immediately better. Wilson made his Steelers debut in week 7 against the Jets, and the Steelers won and scored 37 points, a season high. And then Pittsburgh beat the Giants to move up to 6-2 going into their week 8 bye. If there was a sign or stretch that showed that the Steelers could play with the best of the best, it was definitely coming off of the bye. Not only did the Steelers survive to beat the Commanders by 1 in week 10, but Pittsburgh then beat the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. And if you can beat Lamar, it feels like you can beat just about anyone if the cards are played right. Naturally, the Steelers followed up that 5-game heater with a pretty perplexing loss to the Browns. But the Steelers hadn't secured a winning season just yet. that, they had to buckle up and beat the Bengals and Browns to sit at 10-3. Just what a season. Clearly, the Steelers were a contender and could be a force in the postseason, right? No, that win against the Browns was on December 4th. The Steelers didn't win another game. It wasn't an easy stretch. Pittsburgh lost to the Eagles, Ravens, and Chiefs, but you could argue that those were the top 3 best teams. Then they lost to the Bengals to end the season, to drop from 10-3 to 10-7, just like that. Instead of fighting for the AFC North or trying to avoid the Ravens in the postseason, the Steelers got the number 6 seed. And guess who they had to face in the first round of the playoffs? Baltimore. The Ravens are very good, and it's not hard to see. Lamar Jackson is probably the best quarterback in football right now and likely about to win his 3rd MVP at only 28 years old. The Ravens as a whole are just good, and it's really the best team that's been around him in Baltimore. And that was pretty obvious in the wild card. Baltimore took the lead in the first quarter when Lamar hit Rashad Bateman for a 15-yard touchdown, but it came after a painful 13-play 95-yard drive that took 7 minutes and 13 seconds. It was an absolute killer for the Steelers. And then in the second quarter, the Ravens did it again. Derrick Henry scored on an 8-yard touchdown to cap off a 13-play 85-yard drive in about 8 minutes. And it only got worse before the half with a quick 2-minute drill. The Ravens went 90 yards in 9 plays to score on a Justice Hill 5-yard touchdown catch from Lamar with only 2 seconds remaining to go up 21-0. Now, the Steelers did try to make it interesting and fight back, but it wasn't enough. Russell Wilson did hit Van Jefferson for a 30-yard touchdown and felt like maybe it wasn't over, because after all, Pittsburgh did have time to make it interesting. But then King Henry broke off for a 44-yard touchdown, and it was back to a 21-point deficit. George Pickens did later score on a 36-yard pass from Wilson to make it 28-14, but then neither team scored in the fourth quarter. The Ravens are just a good team, and the Steelers did split in the regular season with them, but it's just hard to beat Lamar. He threw for 175 yards and 2 touchdowns and also rushed for 81 yards. Then King Henry was just insane on the ground. He had 186 yards and 2 touchdowns himself. Just completely unstoppable. Wilson didn't play too bad. He had 270 yards and 2 touchdowns, but the real issue was the running game. The Steelers were down so much so early in the game that they had to throw it. Najee Harris was the top rusher, but he only had 6 carries on the night. It was exactly as expected. The Steelers fell apart late and couldn't do anything in the postseason, and again, the Ravens are a legit force. Baltimore is also in kind of a weird situation where at some point, Lamar Jackson does have to get it done in the postseason. And I'd say the same goes for Josh Allen. Being good in the regular season isn't enough, and clearly Lamar's done that pretty well. He already has 2 MVPs, and based on how All-Pro voting went, it seems like he's on his way to number 3. Lamar is 3-4 in the postseason though, heading into a showdown at Buffalo against Josh Allen. In 2020, Lamar won his first playoff game against the Titans, and then the Ravens lost the next week to the Bills, where they only scored 3 points. Last season, they had the potential to be very special. Baltimore actually got the wildcard bye and had to make the Chiefs go on the road to Baltimore for the AFC Championship. But again, the Ravens still lost. Now, I will say, it's hard to get past the Chiefs and the Bills, and the Ravens are still trying to crack that code. But regardless, it's been an incredible season again for the Ravens, and it wasn't an easy road. Baltimore had to start the season off with a bang at the 2-time defending champ Chiefs, where the Ravens lost to big bad Kansas City again. But the real concern was in week 2, when the Ravens managed to lose to the Raiders. Now, that was weird, and an 0-2 start was pretty unexpected for this team, but the Ravens turned it around as expected to go 12-5 and win the AFC North. The only other losses of the season came to the Browns, Steelers, and Eagles. Really, the addition of Derrick Henry just can't be understated. It was already hard enough to stop Lamar Jackson from rushing around for hundreds of yards, but now try stopping Derrick Henry too. Lamar Jackson ended up passing for 4,100 yards, 41 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions. And of course, course, he also rushed for 900 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then there's King Henry. He didn't quite hit the 2,000-yard rushing mark again, but had over 1,900 yards and an insane 18 touchdowns. For those counting, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry combined for 61 touchdowns. The Ravens are just so good, but it won't matter if they can't win in the postseason. The Bills are also really good, and Josh Allen is right there with Lamar in the MVP race too. It has the potential to be the best game of the postseason, and the winner likely gets to go on and face the Chiefs unless the Texans can somehow play upset. Constantly winning in the regular season won't be enough for Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh, and at some point, it has to change for Mike Tomlin too. Those are two elite coaches who have won Super Bowls, but playing well in the regular season consistently has to come with more success in January and maybe February. The window is absolutely open for the Ravens, but the Steelers need to reevaluate again.